Alright, so now we're going to talk about cumulative relative frequencies. And basically you use cumulative relative frequencies not when you want to find the proportion of data that falls in a particular interval, but when you want to determine the proportion falling either below or above a specified value. So, let's say we have these two questions. What proportion of students got at most 39 points on that test? Oh, and I should mention this frequency distribution is for the number of points that a student got on a test out of 60 points, right? What proportion of students got at most 39 points on their test, and what proportion of students got at least 20 points on their test? So they're asking two different things, so it's very important to acknowledge this distinction, right? This is asking for proportion that they got greater, or at most, my bad, that they got less than or equal to 39 points. And this one is asking the proportion, am I still on the board? Yeah. Proportion that they got at least, so greater than or equal to 20 points, right? And this distinction will really help you find your answer, right? Because if you don't know what you're looking for, how can you find it? So the way we're going to do this is by extending our frequency distribution, right? And we're going to add in a third category called cumulative frequency. Try to draw these lines straight. Whoop. And so, like I said, that last line, oof. Alright, whatever. The cumulative relative frequency basically says what is below everything in this interval, right? What's included in this interval, but also below it. So our first cumulative relative frequency would just be this first relative frequency, right? Because if you have, let's draw a histogram of this. So, I don't know, something like that. This. And there, it's a little bit higher. So for the first cumulative relative frequency, you're only looking at the first bar, so it would just be the first relative frequency, right? But then for your second one, you're going to add on this second bar. So it would be 0.12 plus 0.32, so it would be 0.44, right? And then you just keep tacking them on. This would be 0.06, 0.08, and then 1.0. And you always hope that your cumulative relative frequency of the last interval will be 1, because you want these all to add up to 1. That makes sense, right? Your graph of this should be increasing upwards, right? Because each time you're adding on more and more of a relative frequency. So we can use these numbers to figure out the answer to these problems. So let's see. Proportion that they got less than 39 points. So we look at where 39 points would be. It would be in this interval, right? And then we look at this frequency. Does it make sense that 0.6 students got at most 39 points on their test? I would say so. It would be adding up this box, this box, and this box. So yeah. 0.6 is the answer to this one. Then we have our second question. I don't know how to... There. What proportion of students got at least 20 points on their test? Now, this is not going to be the same thing as what we did for our first problem, right? We're not just going to be adding up these two numbers. We're asking for at least, right? So that's asking for this box, and this box, and this box. We're just subtracting this box from our total value. So a shortcut would be, I'm going to erase this top one. So a shortcut would be 1 minus the proportion that it's less than or equal to 19, right? Which is the same thing as 1.0 minus 0.12 which is simply 0.88, right? But you can also find it a different way. So like I said, we have to add up these 4 boxes, the ones that have at least 20 points. You could just add up their relative frequencies. So 0.32 plus 0.16 plus 0.2 plus 0.2. You would end up with the same exact number. This is just, I believe, a shorter way to get there, right? And that's how easy cumulative relative frequencies are.